I'm going to start with Ben Shapiro. Thank God that he went on the Breakfast Club and set the record straight on a myriad of different things.
I'm a pro-choice person, but I do wonder how come pro-life people aren't anti-war?
Well, I mean, I think everybody is anti-war. I think the question is the definition of when war is appropriate. Assumption by, I think, people who are not pro-life, that pro-life is just about controlling the woman's body. No, it isn't, okay?
But once you define it, depending on your definition, it does control what a woman can and can't do with her body.
Well, there are downstream effects to definitions, of course, right? I mean, if I define life as it begins at a heartbeat, then that is going to have public policy ramifications that affect, and just as in anything else, if I define theft in a particular way, that's going to have downstream effects on people who commit that definition of the crime.
Ladies and gentlemen, ladies, welcome back to another Officer Tatum show. We got a lot to talk about. I want to start with Ben Shapiro. Now, I know in the past, obviously, I always have to preface this because Candace is my best friend, and I don't want her to think I'm over here simping for Ben Shapiro. However, when the brother right, all right? Thank God that he went on the Breakfast Club and set the record straight on a myriad of different things. And it's kind of interesting that Charlemagne the fraud, and I call him the fraud because, man, quit calling yourself something that you ain't, all right? And then he's always saying things that I think is ignorant, bruh. I think it's ignorant. But let's get to the clip real quick because he goes in initially and talks about Israel, Gaza, and y'all know how I feel about it. But to me, I feel like Ben Shapiro put this in perspective, wrote a clip.
Interesting. I want to go back to your book in a second, but I'm glad you said that because you don't think what's happening in Gaza is a genocide.
Correct.
Okay, but the world's leading association of genocide scholars has declared that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza based off the pure definition of genocide.
It's not actually, if you read their actual study, it's not based on the quote unquote pure definition of genocide. They don't actually even define genocide in the document. And they basically went out to their membership, but they didn't go out to the entire membership. They went out to generic membership. It is very easy to join the International Association of Genocide Scholars. In fact, there were several people yesterday who just signed up and were immediately admitted, even though they have no actual background in genocide. The question is not whether some sort of coterie of people who call themselves experts in an issue are quote unquote experts on the issue. The question is whether the definition is met. The definition of genocide is not met in Gaza by any stretch of the imagination. And you can cite to me, a group that I hadn't heard of until 2 seconds ago, and nobody had heard of until 2 seconds ago, that voted in a particular way. That doesn't make a difference definitionally.
So what is a genocide view?
A genocide is the attempt to forcibly destroy an entire population, which is not what has happened.
So it's not the attacks on like the personal facilities needed for like survival, like healthcare and educational institutions.
Well, again, Israel has shipped in more humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip than literally any army to in a population that supports the enemy in literally all of human history. They've been shipping in about 4,400 calories per day per person into the Gaza Strip in the middle of a war in which the enemy is holding actual Israeli hostages underground who, as we've seen from some of the pictures, are actually starving. Again, none of this is to claim that the war is pretty or meticulous or anodyne, because it isn't. It's really, really, really ugly. But over the course of this war, about 3% of the Gazan population has been killed or wounded. If you're going to look at an actual genocide, obviously the prototypical case being the Holocaust, you're looking at 50% of the entire Jewish population in Europe destroyed. If you're looking at other attempted genocides, say the genocides in Rwanda, you're talking about extraordinarily high percentages of the population that are wiped out. You certainly are not seeing procedures that require 4 layers of actual legal authority in order to do a drone strike. And I've actually seen the tape of them doing this in Israel. They actually, if they spot from the air a terrorist who's going into a particular civilian area, you have to take like a full minute where the pilot on the drone calls up the legal authority, who then calls up the higher legal authority to get clearance for the actual drone strike, and they will call off the drone strike if they believe that the military target is too costly in terms of civilian casualties. I mean, Hamas knows this, which is why they're hiding among civilians. In fact, the best proof that this is not, in fact, a purposeful genocide is the fact that Hamas is hiding behind civilians. The reason you hide behind civilians is because you know your enemy doesn't want to kill civilians. Right? If you believe that your enemy doesn't care about killing civilians, you wouldn't hide among civilians. That wouldn't be a defense mechanism.
Do you think Israel needs a regime change?
Israel's a democracy. They've had, I think, 5 elections in the last 4 years. There probably will be election again in March. I do not think that Israel would be conducting this war very differently if there were somebody else in power. And I actually know every Israeli prime minister for the last 10 years, including the ones who are on the opposite side. People like Yair Lapid, who's on the opposite side, or Naftali Bennett, who's on the opposite side.
Do y'all like the new way I do it? I don't know, because I swear I see people in the comment like, play the clip, Brandon, quit talking. So I try to play the whole clip for you before I give my commentary. But I got a lot to say about that, and I got a couple more clips I want to play of Ben Shapiro literally cooking on the Breakfast Club. Ain't that funny? They actually go together, cooking on the Breakfast Club. Okay, all right. Anyway, but the sanity that I hear from Ben Shapiro is enlightening, or not enlightening, but it's encouraging, because it's pure fact-based information. Is this a genocide? No. Does it qualify as a genocide according to the actual definition of a genocide? F no. This group of people, and everybody in America has been using this group of scholars, and then to come to find out that it's not even a real thing. Like, you don't have to be a legitimate scholar to be a part of this. And then the people were making posts, and they were monkeys and all kind of stuff, and they were considered a scholar on this little forum where people got a chance to vote if this is a genocide. What the fake news spread so much faster than real information. And also, the funny thing is, and I don't know why most people aren't getting, their brains are rotting out of their head. Why is Hamas hiding behind their citizens? Why do they go down in tunnels? Because the defense mechanism of this is that the Israeli government is not going to try to kill all these people to get to Hamas. They're going to be measured in their approach, therefore giving them the leeway to live for 2 years. How many people you think in Hamas? If it was Hamas versus the IDF, Hamas would be dead in 30 seconds. One boom, everybody dead. But they hide behind their citizens, hoping that Israel don't go full-fledged, and they haven't. I can go on for 100 years about this. Let's talk about government charity. Ben Shapiro was asked about this also on the Breakfast Club, and this is what he had to say. Wrote a clip.
I think that one of the things that I've also talked about is that government, and this is where you get into the law of unintended consequences. When government intervenes in a lot of these ways, it tends to supplant some of the actual organic institutions that used to do this sort of thing. So I'm a big advocate.
Those places still exist. I just think that sometimes they lack funding. Like, there's for every problem that we're talking about, I promise you there's an organization in every single community that, caters to that, but they just lack funding in a lot of.
Well, I think that's true. I also think that the number one institution that used to help solve these problems was church. And as levels of church going go down, that is a major problem, because the nice thing about a church is that when a church or a synagogue or any other religious institution gives charity, then there's also skin in the game for the person who's receiving the charity, right? You actually have to buy into the system in order to receive the charity to a certain extent, because you're a member of the community. You also know the person who you're receiving the money from. That person is a person you sit next to in the pews. And so government can't really be a substitute for that, just in terms of like cutting a check.
And I don't know how people don't understand that. That's the most basic, fundamental reality is the church should be the number one proponent of philanthropic activity. It shouldn't be the government. The government don't know what they're doing. The government has never been efficient in it. And to be honest, allow people to divert their taxes and giving the government all this bullcrap money versus giving it to an institution that's in the community. Giving it to a church that's active in the community. The members that are receiving the funding actually go to the church versus a government program where people are not vested in. I don't know how people get this confused. It's very simple to me. Like, it makes more sense for churches and religious organizations and nonprofits that are actually doing the work to be able to receive the money, not the government. What has the government done for homelessness in California? The government takes your money and subsidize fake organizations. They should let you take your money and give to organizations that are proven to make a difference. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you about this brand new shirt that we just launched. The Department of War. Donald Trump has initiated or changed the name to Department of War, and I think it's absolutely amazing. And also we have the Southside Trump for all you gangsters out there that want to be gangster. I told them to give me a shirt so I can wear it. But we got the Southside Trump out there. Make sure you go get the apparel here. The Department of War, we also have tumblers, and we also have a coaster that you can have as well. Get your shirts today. Put in CHI20. That's CHI20 for Chicago. CHI20. Get 20% off your merch. Make sure you support the channel. That's a good way to support. Get your shirt today. Ben Shapiro also go on and talk about the pro-life issue. Wrote a clip.
I'm a pro-choice person, but I do wonder how come pro-life people aren't anti-war?
Well, I mean,
because
I think everybody is anti-war. I think the question is the definition of when war is appropriate. I don't like. I like who's running around going like, war is awesome. Yes, more war.
Okay,
Let's do it. And that's a better conversation than the sort of assumption by, I think, people who are not pro-life, that pro-life is just about controlling the woman's body. No, it isn't. Okay, it really is not. Like for pro-lifers, it has literally nothing to do with the woman's body. It has to do with the independent interest of the life inside the woman and how you define that.
But once you define it, depending on your definition, it does control what a woman can and can't do with her body.
Well, there are downstream effects to definitions, of course, right? I mean, if I define life as it begins at a heartbeat, then that is going to have public policy ramifications that affect, I mean, just as in anything else. If I define theft in a particular way, that's going to have downstream effects on people who commit that definition of the crime. And if I broaden the definition, it's going to include more people. Right? That's true for literally any legal term. It's true for any word that we use in life. As you expand the definition, it affects more people in different ways. But that doesn't change the necessity to have the conversation about what the definition is. And I think it's an easy way out to basically say, well, you know, I have a definition of life, but, and it gets into very dicey territory because historically people have defined away entire populations as not human. And so we can't do that, right? Like you really don't want people looking at other people and saying, well, I don't think that this person, I mean, to take the obvious and most controversial example, for a huge percentage of American history, there was a wide variety of people in America who believed black people were not fully human and therefore you couldn't enslave them.
Right, compromise.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And so like so was that a subjective question? That was not a subjective question. Black people are fully human and just as human as white people, equal, the same, right? Like and so if somebody were to say, listen, I personally am anti-slavery, right? I think that slavery is personally wrong, but it's really up to every person to define for themselves whether a black person is fully a human or not fully a human. Be like, what the?
I don't think you can compare those two things.
Why?
Just because I think, you know, if you're a slave master, right, and you say, I believe slavery is right because black people aren't human, like, that's a decision that you're making that is based on things like, you know, what the slaves can do for you and your property. Like the benefit of what slavery will do for that slave master is so different than if a woman has to have a baby because she was raped and how that will affect her life. Like that, I think you have a decision that you can make a lot easier.
It's almost like you force a woman twice, right? Because
she says, do I become a slave master or not versus do I have a baby or not?
She has this baby and now she's forced to have
Let's try a Jewish analogy. Go.
Sure. So, I mean, sure. So if there was an entire population in Europe that was considered subhuman by the Nazis and they were exterminated, if you said, I am personally against the extermination of the Jews, but I understand why Germans could think that Jews are subhuman. And so, you know, it really is up to every individual to determine whether a Jew is human or not fully human and can be put in the back of a van and gassed. We'd be like, what in the world?
You're saying there should be no pro-choice in regards to that?
Yeah, so the definitions are not a matter of choice. Definitions are a matter of actual objective fact. Otherwise, we can't even have a conversation. Because if words have meanings, then we all have to agree on at least that, right? That much we have to agree on is the meaning of the words. And when it comes to, you know, sort of the slave master analogy, the point that I'm making here is not about the personal experience of the slave master. In fact, I'm saying it's completely irrelevant. What I'm saying is that the reason that slavery was wrong is because black people are fully independent human beings who require the protection of the law in the same way as everyone else. And if you're a pro-lifer, you believe that's also true of the unborn.
She really tried she tried. But, and I love the conversation. We should be having this conversation. We should be exploring these possibilities in instances. But the thing is that I think it's very clear what Ben Shapiro said, and I think it's fair, is that we need to have a definition. Life starts at conception, not your perception. Boom, that's the definition. People act like women, like they only bring up rape. This is the thing that I feel like is disingenuous and weaponized to a certain degree, just like the war in Gaza, is they're killing innocent babies. It's like they're weaponizing the rape scenario. 98 or 99% of all abortions are elected abortions that have nothing to do with rape. If somebody wants to make the argument that we can make an exception for rape, that means that we eliminate 98% of all abortions in America. That's a good start for me. I think we should eliminate all of them, but if we can start there, that's a good start. Life starts at conception. And for the 99% scenarios, if you don't want to have children, then keep the legs closed. Don't be hiking it up on the weekend for them football players. Y'all want to keep it real. Don't be hiking it up for a dude you met at the club one night. Don't be hiking it up for your boyfriend and don't put a ring on it. You know how cringy it is for you to run around talking about this my boyfriend, my boyfriend, my boyfriend? That he don't count unless he your husband. And don't be hiking it up just for y'all to break up. And now you got to hike it up for the next man and then hike it up for 5 or 6 other dudes before you actually get a ring on it. If you're not ready for the commitment or you're not ready, if somebody ain't willing to commit, you ain't willing to have a baby, quit doing what it takes to have a baby. That's like me saying I don't want to go to jail, but I want to keep committing crimes. Eventually, I'm going to go to jail. Eventually, I'm going to get caught. If you don't want no baby, quit bumping and grinding and pumping and sweating because eventually you're going to get pregnant. Last one, reparations, which is the big dog in the room. Wrote a clip.
I think that on a sort of public policy level, reparative policies don't tend to be nearly as effective as people want them to be, historically speaking.
They work for Jewish people.
In what way?
Jewish people that receive reparations.
You mean Holocaust reparations, for example, from Germany? So I think that first of all, that there was like a gigantic fight actually in Israel over whether Holocaust survivors should accept reparations from Germany, because the idea was that it's allowing them to expiate their sins of the past, and they shouldn't be allowed to expiate those sins, and it's allowing them to sort of buy off the history for 50 grand or whatever it is. But that is not the reason why Israel has become successful economically. Like just on a success level, the reality is that cutting people checks rarely makes them more successful from the government. What usually makes people more successful is a determined attempt to become the things that the meritocracy demands of you, right? So there were no long scale.
I do think the U.S. foreign assistance for Israel has helped financially.
Well, I mean, the U.S. foreign assistance for Israel actually is a bargain for the United States because
Israel
Israel doesn't need the money. Ben. I've said this before.
Well,
Israel,
give it to us.
I mean,
we'll take it.
That's fine.
The black community would gladly take it.
That's in it. I
can't speak for everybody.
It's like $3 billion a year. We should point out at this point that we spend, I think, $6 billion a year on our military bases in Japan, $5 billion a year on our military bases in Germany. We spend an awful lot of money. That helps an awful lot of other countries. Israel has to spend all of that money, by the way, in the United States on military product. So all of the money that we send to it, we actually don't send money to Israel. We send military product to Israel that is made in the United States. And so it actually is a subsidy to the American defense industry. And there is a deal with Israel where Israel does intelligence sharing and also develops its own tech and can't disseminate it to the world. So, for example, the helmets that our F-35 pilots use, those are Israeli developed helmets like that we can see over the horizon, for example. That's because Israel developed technological add-ons. So the idea that this is sort of like a zero sum, the money goes out, we get nothing back, that's actually not true.
And to add to that, and just a little bit of research that I did, which I think that's why people who talk about this topic, and we shouldn't give Israel money, it's an agreement that they spend the money with us. We give them $3.8 billion, and 75% of that has been spent in America. Now, he said all of it. I haven't verified it. What I've seen is that 75% of the money that we have spent over the last 5 or so years, or in any capacity of the agreement, which was like $17 billion that we've spent so far, and $13 billion have been spent back into America. And that's a part of the agreement. They have to get their equipment and all the military necessities. They have to get it from the United States of America. That's the agreement. Literally, we signed a deal that we give you money to buy from us. Come on, bro. And to the reparations claim, the reparations issue is that Ben Shapiro is correct. And black people, this what tells you how silly most black people are that believe in reparations. If you were smart, you would realize that monetary gift is not going to create wealth. It's just going to create wealth in the pockets of people who have product to sell you. Because I put my life on it. You give 70% of black people some money, and it's because this is what black people do culturally. Give 70% of black people $50,000. The rich will get richer. They go into Louis Vuitton. They go into the car lot. They're going to buy high-end stuff. You can look at any research that has been done. Black people spend more money on high-end apparel, high-end vehicles than anybody else in the same price bracket. It's a cultural thing. They're going to, like, billionaires who are in industries like fashion and all this, they would love for black people to get reparations because they are going to be richer. That's free money for people to spend in their establishment. Historically, black people don't do a good job at circulating money within the community. So all of the money goes out anyway. What would be a solution to the reparations argument would be to give opportunity, which means that instead of giving somebody money, you improve the school system. You get programs to encourage men to be with their family or give women the resources that they need to properly take care of their children. We have an overhaul of this idea of hating the white man or twerking and all this ghetto stuff that prevents black people from being successful and help people politically be astute or open-minded to where we're not politically subjugated to only one side, which means that they don't have to buy a vote anymore, and the other side don't care if we vote for us or not. Those intangible things are things that black people need to understand in order to be successful outside of financial gifting. And if you look at the debt of the country, we couldn't afford to give black people reparations anyway. Because, I mean, I was doing the numbers. Like to give every black person like $100,000, which will do nothing for black people. I mean, $100,000 over the course of your life, and you got to give it to people who are actually descendants of slaves. Now, what if you mixed? One side of your family was a descendant, the other side was a slave owner. What do you do with that person? A mixed person that don't have a direct descendantship, I don't know if that's even a word, from the continent of Africa, they don't get a reparation anyway. So be honest, out of 40 million black people in America, if they gave everybody, including kids and elderly, the money, a lot of black people wouldn't even get it because they're not direct descendants from Africa anyway, or descendants from the slave trade anyway. They can't even draw back to whether or not their family was a part of the slave trade. So I can go down a list of that, but I think Ben Shapiro did an incredible job on the Breakfast Club, and the Breakfast Club need to have more real people on there, right? It's funny that they never invited me on there, which I don't really need. My platform isn't bigger than the Breakfast Club, but if they did, I get on there and cook. I will get on there and cook, and everybody know it.